way we understand race in the West and in Malcolm's identity of how he identified as a Muslim and as a black Muslim, it is very problematic if we start putting that into a Western context and how race has evolved in the West.
Yeah.
I think. And also I think the other thing that I've been thinking is just the issue that I'm not sure whether this is a Western Muslim issue, but the way we see as the black Muslim identity is very, like, I don't know why we're always questioning that, but the Arab Muslim identity or the Asian Muslim identity isn't questioned as that. I don't understand why there's a question as to, you know, the level of your religious identity associated with your race. And I feel like that's very much a Western problem again, because when you go to Africa and you see how Islam has been practiced, like in East Africa, West Africa, where Islam's been there for a very long time, it's evolved to its own culture as well. And there's not, that question isn't being raised. There isn't an Arab Islam. There isn't, you know, that Islam. So I feel like, again, this is something maybe we need to assess as, you know, black Muslims or, like, you know, Arab Asian Muslims living here in the West. How do we understand Islam as well? And culturally, I feel like this is where the whole issue is, like, there's the religious aspect and there's the race identity, if we want to see it. And I feel like that will take a different interpretation depending on the context you're in. So, and that's not something to say that, oh, this is something wrong. It's just natural that you have the theological beliefs, but it's going to take a different identity depending on where you're in. So those are just thoughts I've just been, just thinking that, like, why is it still problematic? As, you know, as not just only a Muslim community, but just generally I've seen even with non-Muslims questioning the whole Muslim, you know, black identity. I don't understand why that is, you know, point of contention in that way. So
really excellent point, actually, and I'm so glad that you raised it, because this is kind of why we have these conversations, actually. So this is exactly why we have these conversations, because I try to invite across the board. We invite Pan-African Afro-pessimist voices and academic voices, and then you're an author and you've got your own, you know, research that you've done on the ground and things like that. So we're very much engaging with voices across the board for this particular reason, because that's why even in this group we are a decolonial education initiative, and we invite all, you know, critical, respectful dialogue. So it is really really great that you brought that up, and if you want to engage with that, actually.
I agree wholeheartedly with what you said, and it's just got me thinking as well. And I think, like you were saying, I think it's mainly a Western problem. It's mainly a Western problem, not.
But then what about Mugabe? What about Mugabe's, you know, sort of like Mugabe's made some very strong. I'm just thinking, you know, I'm thinking that. What about on the world stage when you have African leaders say?
No, but I'm saying it's like if you listen, and I was thinking about this yesterday when I went to watch.
Because you can look at it from a geopolitical perspective.
I'm saying when you're in the West, when you're a non-white person, you think about race a lot. When you're in Africa, you're not thinking about the white person. Do you understand? It's totally. And again, just when I watched what's that film that came out with Lupita?
Queen of
Katwe. The reason why I found it so refreshing was because obviously 90% to 95% of the characters were black. Race wasn't an issue. You're just seeing characters. When I'm watching most films, and I thought it made me question myself, when I'm watching most films.
But isn't that Disney's
America,
objective? No,
it's not because of Disney. I have to do with Disney. And it was actually a good film. My point is that when I'm seeing any film in America, obviously in the UK, I'm naturally conscious of the black representation. How black people, why is it the black person's the thief? Do you understand? I'm thinking about that. When I'm watching a film, which was like the Queen of Katwe, it's all black people, I'm seeing the thief, I'm seeing the good person, I'm not thinking of race. Do you understand? I'm getting that. And I'm saying, because we live in, obviously we're the minority, we live in a racialized society, we sometimes think about it, you could say we think about it too much, but it's our experience. Because you cannot not help but feel, you know that you're black, you know that you're Asian, you know that you're not white, because it's seen everywhere. Do you understand? So it's going to reflect how you view things. But I'm saying that if you're in an environment where you're all like the same colour, you don't think about things the way we see it.
I think to a certain extent, like you mentioned, like that's so true. I've noticed this because just talking to my parents, they're from East Africa, Somali Kenyans, and just the way they grew up in the concept of race and identity and religious identity, the way it's transformed over the years within just that region. It's really interesting to just to sort of see and understand. Like over there, I mean, it's a tribalistic, just like any other part of sub-Saharan Africa, tribalistic. You know, every like different tribes, different religious groups. But it's interesting, of late there's this whole new Muslim kind of persecution of that region, which if you talk about when they grew up, it was not as much. They were not aware of these things until the whole colonial, thing that happened, and like independence, and even like now, like just seeing the foreign politics that's going on, like the influence on that. So it's interesting to see that, that in itself with globalization and how it works, and how Western powers have so much influence over there, it's being translated across to Africa itself. But these were not issues that our grandparents were having necessarily.
I mean, it's just funny you said that, because I'm now thinking of my parents, and when I speak to my parents or people that's around their age, race is not an issue. And even again, just coming to your point, Nadi, about understanding blackness, amongst a number of West Africans, Nigerians, an Asian person is considered to be white. That sounds shocking. Yeah, exactly. No, it's true.
No, I mean they may well have that.
In their understanding, and even when the language that they use, they'll describe an Asian person the same way they'll describe David Beckham. In terms of the ethnicity, like seriously. Now we might look at like that.
But what about the ethnicity within Asia that have like African descent?
No, I'm just talking about their perspective. So that's why I'm saying, if you're going to talk to them about all the black people together, and you bring people of Asian descent, they'll be like, I'm just saying that's just their experience, because when they're looking at anyone who's basically you could say dark skin, like with strong African features, is not even it's not black, it's just white, and they don't say it in a derogatory manner. They just do you understand what I'm getting? They don't demarcate between Western European, Eastern European, and East Asian. No, they're all white. They're all like the other. Do you understand what I'm getting? And that's the language that they use. So it's interesting, even like I said, speaking to people from different parts of the world and how they view things, because like Ayan said, we can't help but westernized, and the way we view things is very from a Western perspective, and obviously we've got the issue of the social construct of racism and stuff like that, which we can't get away from. But I think in order to come out of that, we need to speak to people who do not, and that's why traveling is important. Because you will find that even people from different parts of the world, they do not self-identify with this whole kind of concept of blackness the way, especially how black people identify with blackness in America. And I'll argue the reason why so many people in this country identify with the whole concept of blackness is because we share the same, because like America's kind of seems like Britain's cousins, and we've got a similar like language. And I always mention Brazil. The reason why is because their view of race in terms of like Afro-Brazilian is very different to like Americans, and like obviously British people. And again, I would argue because they haven't been exposed to the African American understanding or perspective of race, and obviously their history is very different. So I think we need to kind of also speak to other black people or non-white people, shall we say. And I think even why don't we call ourselves brown people? Because if we're going to say brown people, you can say technically that's more accurate, because we are all different shades of brown. Do you understand? Rather than coming under the concept of black or black. But again, that's just some thoughts.
I mean, there was just one point, so on that, because it's really important, and then I will get to you. When I position myself, I'm mixed ethnically speaking, so I'll have an Afghan, Pakistan, whatever, Pashtun or whatever heritage you could say. When I position myself, say when I go to northern Pakistan, where obviously my ancestors were colonized by Alexander the Great, but they're not so great. Obviously, if you have a look at certain indigenous tribes from North Pakistan, in which my mum belongs, they have like blue eyes, and they're basically very fair, but they're not white people, obviously, and they don't actually have European genes either. And they were colonized, and I would say that when you go to Pakistan also, it's like when I kind of am engaging in conversation with certain ethnic groups positioned in sort of post-colonial urban areas, in Lahore, which was very, it has colonial remains, and the buildings are all there and so on. And when you kind of engage in conversation, they have this fascination with being white, and they have this obsession with whiteness and the whole fair and lovely construct. And basically I think that it's very important also when we're engaging in sort of conversation with whiteness and white supremacy, that we look at things not only through people's experience but through history and historical facts and colonialism and obviously other brutal kind of brutal historical incidences that obviously evolved from white supremacy. And I think also into contemporary understanding, how we translate the history is how we position Africa, Asia, that was looted, pillaged and economically crippled by Europe and European settler states. I think that we should also kind of look at how African people are positioned on the world stage, how Asian people are positioned on the world stage as well. And ultimately, fair enough, Pakistan could be a member of the United Nations, but we hold absolutely no traction. If we translate it to Hegel's, the whole master-slave dialectics, ultimately the master is still the European and the white man, and I think these are the contemporary political. So when we look at blackness and engaging in
so to cut you off, I think ultimately where our shared struggle is, whether you're of African descent, Asian descent, or whatever, is fighting white supremacy or European supremacy. That's where we can all, I think, come together and agree on, because that's
and
the issue.
Anti-blackness within Asia
I agree.
It's resisting.
But this is where, and that's why I was saying, trying to define what you define, trying to define blackness, because if we're going to use black or blackness, meaning political blackness, meaning incorporating everyone, then you won't fight anti-blackness within Asian communities, because we're all the same, so it's not an issue. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Is anti-blackness a product of colonialism? Is it? This is the
thing. This has been an issue. The whole issue of anti-blackness has been an issue even in Arab communities before the Europeans came into. That's something which I spoke about in one of my books as well. And that's something that this idea, and that's why I'm saying we
but
can't.
The Arabs had a very supremacist.
Yeah, but the fact that was an issue before the Europeans came into the Muslim world, we can't blame the Europeans on they're not. We can't blame them for everything. That's my point. Do you understand? Because it was surprising to me, because if you were to ask me 10 years ago, what's with anti-blackness, how the Europeans, colonialism, Western imperialization, stuff like that, when I found out about obviously the anti-black racist sentiments in classic Muslim literature or Arab literature before the Europeans came in, I'm wondering where did this come about? Do you understand? I'm getting
how did it come about? What's the psychology?
Yeah. But it's an issue, it's a problem.
But but colonialism certain changes the direction in which this.
I think ultimately it's about fighting white supremacy. So even in terms of intellectualism, we look at if you've graduated, if you've come from a quote unquote prestigious European institute, which again is subjective in terms of what you're studying and the methodology and stuff like that. That is more superior than coming from them studying in African or Asian institute. Do you understand? Irrespective of whoever taught you. So even ourselves, we've been colonized, we've been conditioned. We can't get away from that. But then there's also a case of trying to question how we've been conditioned, and then try and so when we're having these kind of discussions, you start to think and reevaluate your own thoughts. Because I try and do that on a regular basis as well. Because I'm not going to try and pretend that I'm not conditioned. I don't hold some you could say white supremacist beliefs, in the sense that not I believe that they should be on top, but subconsciously, does it affect me? Of course it does. Do you understand? I'm getting that. So it's all about trying to have these type of discussions and speak to different people when in travel, whatever, and then reevaluate ourselves, and then obviously we can help others as well. Because one thing I've noticed is that a number of people that are fighting white supremacy and stuff like that, they make it as if they've not been conditioned at all.
No,
definitely. We have to admit ourselves.
But I think
that's where I think
unlearning that toxicity.
I think that's where Malcolm's life was so, for so many reasons, so inspirational, because he questioned himself and he was able to reevaluate. And that's very difficult, especially when you're in his late 30s, and to be going across the country and even across the world preaching something, and then to say that I'm wrong because you found the truth. That's very difficult. So that is, if anything, should be something that I think we can all kind of learn from and draw inspiration from. And the fact that he also, when he was in prison, said that he wasn't, one thing that he was someone that's dedicated to studying and knowledge and reading, and he would gladly, even if, as a 30-year-old man, I think, or his late 20s, go back to high school and sit with like 10, 12 year olds. How many of us would be willing to do that, to acquire knowledge again? Do you understand that kind of that bravery in terms of like not having an ego and stuff like that? So I think that's important.
So, yes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh
Yes,
God.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so like when
But
you were
we will come to you because you haven't spoken yet.
You're saying like the Americans, they don't see themselves as, no, over here they don't, like people don't see themselves as black. Americans don't see themselves as African. Like they see themselves, like some of them, like as black Americans. They, like,
Yeah.
If you ask them if they're African, they'll say no, they're not.
But that's what Malcolm X was trying to address, this whole idea of why, because Europeans have projected a negative perception about Africa, people want to escape Africanness.
But as for like people wanting to lighten their skin, it's like prevalent all over Asia and things.
Yeah.
Like it's like people over here that want to get a suntan, I think personally.
Nah,
don't think it's the
no,
same. I
it's
don't think it's the same.
absolutely not.
I
It's
don't
a
think
product
it's the same.
of
I think that's a
a
problem.
deeply entrenched
Yeah.
self-hate and
I don't think
colonialism.
that's the same as good.
Thais do it.
And it didn't exist pre-colonial times.
Thais haven't been colonized.
Yeah, I don't think it's the
That's
same.
arguable. I mean, it's questionable as to whether we can. Okay, sorry, we're gonna come back to that conversation.
I just would like to come back to Malcolm X. Have you finished the book?
Sorry?
Have you finished to read the book?
Have I finished reading it?
Yeah.
For myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read it.
So what did you learn from
Number
him?
of, what did I learn from it? That's a good, when I first read it when I was about 11 or 12.
Yeah.
That's a good question, actually. But the reason why it's a good question is because when I read it, because I've read it obviously at different stages, I've read it about like 8 times, I learn different things, because obviously my different stages I am in my life or whatever. But one of the things which stuck with me is to be proud, obviously, of your Islamic faith and obviously your African heritage. They're the two, because again, as a Muslim and of African descent, that's something that helps me a lot when I was when I first read it, like at 12 years old or whatever. And also not being afraid to learn and study, even if you don't know something. That's there's so many things. What else did I learn? One thing, actually, probably one of the most important thing I've learned from his life or the book is his bravery and his willingness to sacrifice. It's probably one of the most admirable things I admire of him, is that he was willing to sacrifice himself for his beliefs, and that's something that very few people are willing to do. It's easy to kind of say things when you're in a safe space, but when he was even getting death threats, after they firebombed his house with his wife and his 4 daughters in the house, he still was willing to speak the truth against how he's sitting. That was just like, that is what it was just remarkable. Just like, wow, like he really believed in whatever he was saying, even during the period when he was in Nation of Islam and after, and he was able to, like I said, when he was left the Nation of Islam and then went to Mecca, he reevaluates, he always question himself, and that's something I think as we as people, you're never too old to learn something new, and to kind of track some of your statements or your beliefs or your thoughts. And another thing, there's a lot of things I've learned from him. An appreciation of black women, because I'll be honest, his book, it did, because it was a lot of what he was saying is like I felt like he was speaking to me, that you have been conditioned the same way why you appreciate certain women with certain, but so again, especially speak as a man, obviously living in the West, why you value certain women of a certain, that look a certain way, and so again, to make me think, why is that? So there's a lot of things, but ultimately it's just a case of there's a lot of things. That's a good question. That's a good question. But depending on where I was at the stage of my life, it was different things that I learned. But ultimately, it was as a Muslim, to be proud of my Islamic faith. Number one, that's something that he ended on, which despite talking about everything that he's gone through, all praises due to Allah. So that as a Muslim resonated with me, and then his African identity and willingness to kind of always educate himself and self-educate as well. So not educate, necessarily go to university. He was autodidact, someone that's read and taught himself. So it's not about, of course it's good to go to university, get these degrees or whatever, but you don't need someone's validation to become knowledgeable. And I think that's something that, just reading his book and listened to some of his speeches that I learned from him. That's a good question.
Thanks.
So
Ayan?
yeah, I just wanted to add to that. That's a really really important point. I was listening to a talk on Malcolm X, and it was an amazing thing that the speaker was saying that one of Malcolm's I guess the biggest thing you can learn from him is the fact that he taught himself.
Yeah.
And I mean, Malcolm even criticized the American education system,
Yeah.
the college, the prestigious colleges that educate people, and his way, what he was saying, that the amount of time that he spent in reading in prison and educating himself was probably far more than those students who went to Harvard, Yale, Brown, who are supposed to be the well-cultured, well-read, individuals. So I think a lot of the times, taking that personal responsibility to educate yourself, to read everything out there, to challenge yourself, and get as close to objective knowledge as much as possible, is probably one of the greatest things that you can learn from Malcolm. And given his background, his evolution as a character, as a person and a character, how he's gone through that, I think it's so important to learn that. The concept of self-education. I think that's probably one of the reasons that makes Malcolm, as for me, personally as a character, someone who transcends race, religion, all this thing. This is kind of like humanity in its greatest kind of form. So I think definitely adding to that point of self-education is so important.
Did anybody else? James? I always value his input. I think that sometimes you pick up on things that perhaps people don't. So, do you have anything else to add?
Actually, I don't. It's not. I should everybody else. But I think Malcolm X. I think he's one of those really important figures in